Good morning to all, or good afternoon, good evening, and good night. I didn't intend to do a Truman Show thing there, but ta-da. Okay, um, so I'm watching these guys play these guys right now. Now Carolina's up 2-0 on the Senators, which would put the Hurricanes at 43 points halfway through the season, and that would put Ottawa still at 35. Now Ottawa's 15 points out. The question becomes one of, as a general manager, when do you say, okay, we're not going to make it? And it's a question that somebody asked in the comments yesterday. And I thought, you know what, we're halfway through the season. It is time to start having that conversation, because the GMs that recognize that they need to do a rebuild / retool right now, rather than the ones that realize it later, if you get ahead of the game, you put yourself in a better position to compete next year. Now, when it comes to who needs Jack Hughes, it's obvious it's Ottawa, and they're the one team that can't get him. Obviously, as well, St. Louis is down there in points, but St. Louis still has a bunch of games in hand on everybody. They just have to win them. So, for instance, St. Louis is at the bottom of the West with 36 points, but they've only played 39 games. Chicago is 1 point ahead of them, has played 4 more games. Same with LA. Arizona's 1 point ahead of them, has played 2 more games. The Oilers are 5 points ahead of them, have played 2 more games. So this is where it starts getting difficult. St. Louis can leapfrog 3 teams pretty easily. It's not like Arizona, LA, or Chicago are threatening to jump into a playoff spot, although Chicago does scare me on some level. The West is interesting because I've got this dividing line here where it's 10 points. Anything more than 10 points in my eyes, yeah, you're done for the year. Making up a 10-point difference in half a season is darn near impossible. That being said, you've got the Rangers at 9, Florida at 9, Carolina at 9 right now, pending the result with Ottawa. The difference being they have games in hand on Buffalo. And Buffalo looks quite catchable right now. But the caveat to that is Montreal's 1 point out. So not only do you have to catch Buffalo, you also have to catch Montreal. And Montreal doesn't look to be quite as willing to fall back in the standings at this stage of the game anyways. Although that loss to Nashville last night hurt them. But, halfway through the season, it definitely looks like Buffalo, Montreal may end up fighting things out, and Boston may end up in there too, to figure out which is the last team from the Atlantic Division to make it. I don't know that Carolina can make up the space. But if they can add another offensive weapon, maybe. Florida, I don't see it. The Rangers, I don't see it. New Jersey, Detroit, Philly, Ottawa. If Philly had the goaltending and the defense they need, but those are 2 of your 3 important parts of your team. Offense is fine, but if you don't have the defense and the goaltending, that's not going to work. Out West is trickier because Anaheim has 45 points in 42 games, which is 5 less than Buffalo, and they occupy a playoff spot. Which means, as I said last night, odds are we're going to see a team miss the playoffs in the East who would have made the playoffs in the West, and everybody's going to lose their minds. Much like last year when, Florida should have made the playoffs, but Colorado missed. Right. Because it's Florida, there wasn't a big uproar at the time because it's Florida. But if Montreal misses the playoffs in the East when they would have made it in the West, get ready for some fans to be complaining. Now, Vancouver's 1 point out, but they're in a unique position in that I don't take them seriously as a Stanley Cup playoff contender. They're 1 game below 500, which is the same kind of record posted by New Jersey in the East. And nobody's going to say, oh, New Jersey's going to make it. And there are some diehard Devils fans who are going to say, hey, it's only 40 games, we can do this. But the math gets kind of sketchy because in those other 42 games, they'd have to post, I would think, 58, 59 points to legitimately get into the playoffs. That's about 16 games above 500. That's some wonky math when you're looking at a 14 games or a 40 game schedule. You have to go on a huge run. But because of the West having Anaheim down here, and of course Dallas and Colorado both have 48 points, it's doable. Now, Minnesota's kind of the one that I'm keeping my eye on, because they're 2 games. They have the 2 games in hand on Anaheim, and they're only 2 points back. So if Anaheim keeps backtracking, Minnesota is highly capable of jumping into that last playoff spot, which would make Minnesota fans go, "Oh, good, we're the number 2 wild card. Good, that's a good thing, right? Because we get Calgary. That'll go well." Because Minnesota's issue in the first round has been putting themselves behind the 8 ball almost before they take the ice, because of who they end up against. The Oilers are in danger because they're 4 points back. They've got 1 game in hand on Anaheim, but they're trending in the wrong direction. They're only 4 points clear of Arizona, who played the same number of games. They are 4 points clear of LA and Chicago. LA and Chicago have both played 2 more games. LA and Chicago, based on the fact they've played more games, they're 8 points out of the playoffs. I don't really see them as a playoff threat right now, even though, as been stated, and I'm stating it now, it's going to be a little bit easier to make the playoffs in the West than in the East. But I really think Minnesota ends up jumping into that spot if Anaheim continues to back out of it. And Anaheim, and Duck fans will tell you this, Anaheim usually plays better in the second half than in the first. So by that measure, they should end up with 95 points, you would think. Which would be almost too much for LA and Chicago, since they're 6 games below 500. That means they'd have to be like 19 games above 500 from here. The math gets really, really wonky. And then for St. Louis, they're interesting in that they're not really out of it. So because they have 3 games in hand on Anaheim, I don't look at the fact they're 9 points back as being a huge problem. Now you look at last night. Last night they go up against the Islanders. They're up 2-0 and they blow it. They lose 4-3. If they win that game, they have 38 points. They're right here. If they win that game and they're right there, then I'm saying, you know what? They're 7 points back. They've got 3 games in hand. No, they're not done. The reason that I kind of qualify St. Louis as being out is the fact they keep shooting themselves in the foot. Every time you look at a game they have and you say, all right, they should be on their way now, they shoot themselves in the foot the next game. And it doesn't matter whether it's Jake Allen's fault, whether it's the defense's fault, whether it's a coach, whether it's the GM. At this point, it's just whatever the reason is, they managed to shoot themselves in the foot a lot. And of course, for St. Louis, they traded their first-round draft pick to Buffalo. And if it is top 10 lottery protected, as I've said in videos before. And right now they look like they're a top 10 lottery pick. If you look in reverse order of points, Ottawa's number 1, to which Joe Sakic somewhere just went, yes. Philadelphia would be number 2. Number 3 would be St. Louis. And then 4, 5, and 6. In no particular order, Chicago, LA, and Arizona. And if Arizona ends up being one of the bottom 4 teams in the league when everything is all settled out this year, it's so weird to me that Arizona keeps spinning their wheels and they don't seem to be getting a whole lot better. They still can't score. And yet their young GM kind of gets off scot-free. We hear all kinds of criticism about all kinds of GMs, but Arizona's GM kind of gets off scot-free. He makes these minor upgrades and make minor differences. But while we're seeing, a team like Buffalo make that jump, Arizona really hasn't. So, for me, yes, a team in the East Coast that's below the green line, I can't see the math working for these teams to make the playoffs. In the West, it's murkier, as I said, because of Anaheim. But if I had to put the line anywhere, I'd probably start with Arizona and below that. So for me, Arizona, LA, Chicago, and St. Louis, highly unlikely to make the playoffs. And that's despite the fact LA and Chicago have both showed signs recently that they could be turning things around. But you've got to be realistic. You've got 39 games left. Both teams have 39 games left, and they'd have to win, 30? 30 wins. 39 games would get you to 97 points. 25 wins would get you to 87 points, which probably doesn't do it. and that's 25 wins in 39 games. So you lose 14 out of 39. The math just doesn't seem to work. And Arizona I have down here for much the same reason as St. Louis. They keep shooting themselves in the foot. Now, Edmonton is for me right on that line. And in the East, the Rangers in Florida are probably going to look to tear it down somewhat. Florida doesn't really have much to tear down. They've got a lot of young guys. The Rangers, on the other hand, Zuccarello sticks out like a sore thumb as a guy who's probably going to go. But there you go. Let me know what you guys think. Which of the teams that are currently out of the playoffs are done? I'm going to go back to watching the game now between the Canes and the Sens and see if the Canes really are ready to make that step. Within 7 points of Buffalo, remembering that they're only 6 points then behind Montreal. They still have a game in hand. The math is dodgy, but it's still there. And for Ottawa, yeah, it just keeps piling up. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And yeah, I can reinvestigate this, say, a month from now. We'll see where everybody's at, especially since we'll be getting close to the trade deadline. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.